Hi everyone, this is Raymond Wood at the Raymond Wood podcast. Now, we've been away for a couple of weeks. We've been on the road. We've been to Melbourne, to Perth, Geelong. We're happy to be back in the studio, and I've got to introduce you to the most amazing Sunaina. Is that how we pronounce it? I'll get that right. Perfect. Now, a little bit about Sunaina and a background. So, one of the big things, I got connected to you through an amazing lady called Carol Fox, who is probably one of the best connectors of people in Australia. 100%. And she is also a big advocate of women in sport and just pushing females in general. And as all of our listeners know, I'm a big advocate because I've got 2 daughters. So welcome to the show, Sunaina.
Thank you so much, Ray, for having me here. Excited.
Very good. Now, what I want to do is, before we talk about your current role at Surf Life Queensland, we'll just talk a little bit about your involvement, firstly, for some of our listeners and our female listeners in sport growing up, because firstly, I didn't realise I actually knew you until we come into the room, and I discovered we'd actually met many, many years ago at tennis competitions through my eldest daughter. But where did you grow up, and what sports did you play when you were growing up?
Yeah, firstly, it's amazing. It's the smallest world ever. I can't imagine that I met you when you were there as a parent, and now here we are. But in saying that, I grew up in India, so I think my sister and I were really lucky to have the support that we did. Like my dad's, he's a sports person, played football, and to all the Australian listeners out there, football for us is football, not we don't call it soccer. But in saying that, so he was a tennis player, footballer, golfer, all of it. And my sister and I got into sport quite a bit. Tennis and football were my 2 main sports. I didn't really have a choice, and you're not going to like this because I know you're a Liverpool fan. So is my brother-in-law, but he's the only one in the entire family we didn't really have a choice with Manchester United, but now we're diehard fans. So, so it's always been a part of our life with growing up. And even though we didn't have the, opportunities and infrastructure, and, I look today and I'm in Australia working in sport with, the level of opportunities that we have and pathways, it's amazing. And even with limited pathways, I still continue to play in school. But I think I realized quite early that we're not going to make it professionally as a tennis player or a footballer. The next thing that I did decide was, and I put my heart into it, is I'm going to work in sport no matter what. Yeah. And that's when it all started, I think, the whole journey of coming to Australia and pursuing, further education to get to a point where I could be recognized at this, level, and being a specialist in gender equity and women in sport. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Very similar to my journey. Me and my younger brother, we were into sports. We loved football. Probably football was the only sport we played, but I was never going to ever make it as a professional football player, and I just wanted to be involved in some way. Yeah. And I think that's one of the big things that we push in our program. We run a program called the Professional Player Pathway, and it's to help boys and girls realise that it is possible to get there, but also maybe life after being a professional, or if you don't make it as a professional, you can still work in the amazing game of sport, and that's something that you've obviously made a life of it so far. So we talk about when you grew up, and you've said that you played tennis, you played football, you had good parents and good support. What age were you when you first come to Australia?
Oh, way later. After I finished, I was 24, 25. So I don't want to give away my age, but 2015 is
we won't ask your age.
So it's been a couple of years since I got here, and I mainly came to study in Melbourne. I was studying at Deakin University, decided to specialise and do a Master of Business in Sport. It was a 2-year course, and I thought I'll be back home before that, but it's just, after I finished, the timing was right, and I just set my goal into, the Commonwealth Games, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go sit on the Gold Coast and actually get this opportunity, because not going to get it through emails and phone calls, and I didn't have a network because I was just 2 years still too young and new in the country. Yeah. So I moved to the Gold Coast, and then it started with the Women's Sport Australia and the introduction to Carol Fox, and as you said, she's an amazing connector, but an amazing mentor, and there wasn't we weren't introduced through anything, but she genuinely believed in supporting another woman like myself who wanted to come into the industry and, you know, wanted heard about my background. And I still remember the day she connected me to my mentor, Lauren Penny. And at that time, I was more inclined towards events, working in the Commonwealth Games. And Lauren is still my mentor to date. I think that relationship has now changed into more of a friendship. And I've seen I've had 2 babies in the last 8 years. So, yeah, it just makes so much difference when you have that support and those peers around you to just carry you through.
So when you got the role, we'll talk about the Commonwealth Games, because I was very fortunate to attend a lot of the games with my daughters. We went and watched, and it was inspiring. I think for my eldest girl at the time, I think she's 15 now, but I think she would have been like 9 or 10 when we took her. But what was your role within the Commonwealth Games?
I was doing actually volunteer management and transport operations. So it was not sport operations with what I thought, but I guess I just took in the first opportunity that I got. I guess the biggest thing that I took out of it was A, being a part of the games, which is amazing, and B, my first opportunity in managing so many volunteers. And I think that really set the tone for what, you know, the work that we do now with non-for-profits and the sporting organizations that I've been involved in. So, yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, and the run-up to that, how involved was you in the Commonwealth Games? Was it like 3 months out? Was it 2 years out? How early did you have to get involved?
I was probably a month or 2 out, because it was the last of the hiring and, you know, that starting role, given it was my first ever a major event that I'd worked in. So, yeah, it was fairly, I was there for probably a couple of weeks before it started till the end of it. But yeah, it was definitely a great starting stone to that career of sport.
That's amazing. I think as well, I've been very fortunate to work with quite a few amazing females in sport, and they're probably the most amazing people who's impressed me the most has been females I've worked with. I had a really good friend who I worked with at University of Queensland, and she was heading up one of the sports departments at UQ, and she's now like one of the biggest bosses in UEFA. Like basically runs football in Europe, and it's just amazing just to see so many females being so successful and being motivated as well, and I think helping the next generation coming through as well. So post Commonwealth Games, do you think that sort of helped you a little bit in achieving your next couple of roles that you got into?
Yeah, I think it just gave me a lot more confidence. It's always hardest when you are starting out. And I think for all our listeners, for the times that you feel like, oh, you know, this is the start of something and I'm going to get there and it's 1 week and 2 months and a year and 2 years, just, I guess it's really boosted my confidence with knowing, like when I went in for my job interviews with tennis, you wouldn't believe this, and I did say to the CEO at the time who hired me, he was amazing, where he did say, he's like the 3rd interview for the same role in another region, and I remember that discussion where he's just like, okay, why should we hire you? And this is my 3rd interview. I was like, I'm going to keep coming back. Like, so
until you get a job.
Yeah. And because I was really confident that I could do it. And I think that comes from experience. And again, the fact is, I think our skill sets are so transferable as well. A lot of people feel like, oh, they've never done it, or they've never worked in sport, or they come from different professions that they can't do it. But I guess if you just believe in that skill set, is very transferable into different roles, and especially within sport. So, yeah, boosting my confidence after the games.
That's so good. It is so true. Like, one of the big things we're looking at now, we're running our professional player pathway program, and we're getting so many successes with all of our football players, girls and boys. Yeah. But also the methodologies that I learned going back 15 years ago when I worked on this huge project for the Premier League, and we spent £1.6 billion on the project. Yeah. I copied and pasted them methodologies into tennis. And I had no background in tennis. I never played, I never coached. But my 15-year-old has done amazing so far in tennis just through those methodologies. And I know even if she doesn't make it fully as a pro, I know she'll stay in the sport for life, and I think that's a good thing to try and keep people in sport. So we'll talk a little bit about tennis. So you've gone into your tennis role, and you're working for Tennis Queensland and Tennis Australia?
Yeah, I did 5 years, which is amazing, especially given it was a sport that I grew up playing. So that was I started from like a development officer role, so working with clubs and really on the ground. And I think that role is amazing because it really gives you the lay of the land and allows you to understand how the organization works and a little bit of everything. And then when I started working for Tennis Australia, it was more specializing with women and girls. So my role after 3 years with Tennis Queensland was the women and girls lead with TA, which was... I always knew, I think being brought up in India, like I remember when I was working at, when I was a student at Deakin University and the India office, did an article, just promoting the university, and I spoke, as an alumni and as a student. And now when I look back at that article in 2015, it literally said that I would like to work for something in women and girls. Even though I had no idea how I'm going to get there, but that passion and that fire, like everything I did, like I had a gender lens in my other roles. And I think that kind of got me to a point where I wanted to really specialize and give back. And my background is in sociology as well. So I did a bachelor's in sociology before I moved to Australia. And I feel like somewhere the two have come together.
Merged.
And that allows me even like theoretically to think of these things in a broader global aspect and then kind of combine it with what I'm doing now with sports. So just that awareness. So that's funny how life comes one full circle, but it has,
I think there's a saying, you got to be careful what you put out into the universe because what you say normally comes true. 100%. So it's like, it's so good that you said that when you were an alumni and it's come to true that you've worked in the female sector in sports. Now, one of the big things we speak about to our athletes as well, we always tell them everything's not always roses. It's not always easy. It's always a hard journey. Yeah. What are some of the sort of maybe the barriers working that you see in women's sports and that girls have to go through, and what's maybe an example you could give us, like a hurdle like you've had to try and get over or get across to, whether it was for yourself or to help females in sport?
I think there's so many barriers. I think the main one is the systemic barriers that we have, because there's so much historically that we are unpacking now, working in gender equity and things like that. I think there are a number of great opportunities, pathways, programs, initiatives now where I've often found, I guess, that the bit of a hurdle to jump over has been, how can we make this sustainable? Are we reviewing processes? Are we reviewing where the actual change is going to come? Because you don't want to put something and then, have an amazing program and run that and send women back into an environment which is not as supportive. So I think working through that has been something that, I always look at the moment, when we work towards what initiatives we want to have for women and girls in Surf Life Queensland. I think I'm very focused about the fact that it needs to be, something sustainable, something that's driven by data, something that's informed, and also creating networks of allies and taking people, not just women, but taking everyone along on that journey to share what you're achieving. So, that's one in terms of systemic, historical. When you go into high performance and things, there are a number of barriers that come with that, with, lack of representation, or even if there's representation, there's not enough media coverage. It's been said that there's been 10% of media coverage only for women's sport outside of major sporting events. So, when we do have things like the FIFA World Cup and the Olympics, like how much that weighs for women and, how that would transpire into more media representation, because you can't do what you can't see. And I always say that, and I know so many of us say that, but it's so, so true. Like, you got to see people in those positions of, where they're power as well as taking on responsibility and advocating, to be able to imagine yourself as that. Yeah.
We'll touch on the World Cup. So I was very fortunate last year to go to a lot of the games, in between doing a tour to the UK, where it was crazy for me because I attended a few of the Women's World Cup games in Brisbane.
Yeah.
Then I took 140 players and families to the UK for a tour. And we're in a Women's Premier League game at Liverpool, and there was like 60,000 people in a stadium watching them play. and then to come back to Australia and to get to go to the World Cup final. And that, I spoke about it on camera, on socials. We get to cover all the biggest games. We go to Champions League finals. But I'll be honest, this Women's World Cup final was the best game I've ever been to. And even England losing to Spain, but it was the atmosphere, the feel, the vibe, and it was like, it just goes to show if people get behind it and support it, it's as good, if not better, than the men's game as well. And I spoke about this with a guy called Emil Heskey, so he used to play for England and Liverpool, on a podcast a few weeks ago. And he said there's just a real, he called it like a samba vibe, like when you go to watch a Brazil game. He said the women's game is just different. He said you just have such a high energy about it. And it's so exciting. We're going to go to a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more on that Women's World Cup and then talk a little bit about Queensland Life Saving and what you're doing with your role now.
Would you one day like to be a professional football player? Would you like to be part of our pro player pathway? What is the pro player pathway? It's an opportunity for all Australian football players aged between 10 and 23 who want to join us to become the next professional football player. On the pro player pathway, you get to join me and my team free of charge to an event all around Australia. When you join me, we're going to teach you the secrets of football in Europe. And one day, maybe, you could be gracing the Champions League final. Guys, over the next 12 months, we're going to be coming around all the major cities of Australia. And when we come around all the major cities, we're going to be running our free events everywhere we go. So guys, what have you got to lose? Nothing. It's a free event. It's for boys and girls aged 10 to 23. And I'm going to teach you the secrets of becoming a top European football player. Oh, and one final thing. We're going to be giving away 20 scholarships to join me on this program of a lifetime.
Hi everyone, this is Raymond Wood and I'm still here with Sunaina, and we are about to just finish off. We were talking a little bit about the Women's World Cup. Did you manage to get to any of the games in the World Cup?
I did go to one. I just wanted to watch England play. Sorry, it's just the Manchester United players. I was just like, I'm going to watch them hurry up. So that was amazing. Would have liked to go for more, but managed to do one. But in saying that, it was just, you're right. With the atmosphere that was just there, it was just fantastic. And I can't remember. I think it was a game against Australia versus Ireland where the national broadcast was about 4.8 or something million. And I think that in itself, like, it just, as you were saying before we went on break, it just blows my mind with, when people really get behind it. I don't think it's the same as what we've constantly heard, that nobody wants to watch women's sport. That's not really it. It's how it's marketed. It's the business of sport behind it, the sponsorships, the players, I think even the representation of players, as young women, I guess what the visibility that we demand was very different to what men and boys may want. And I think representation of a player as someone realistic, their stories, and there's a lot more of that happening where you can relate to the player. It was just absolutely amazing just being a part of that. And I remember I did speak at a Griffith University symposium at the same time, so I was engaging with a number of amazing things happening around the FIFA World Cup. And that the thing that I spoke about at the conference was mega events and the impact that it's going to have for women and girls going forward with the FIFA World Cup at the heart of it. So it was just awesome.
Yeah, it was an amazing tournament, and I think it was again, we talk about volunteers, but I think it was a testament to Australia to put on the showpiece that they did, and it was a absolutely phenomenal event. And also Earps, the goalkeeper who plays for England and Manchester United, she's so good. Like,
fantastic.
I was very fortunate to work in the women's game when I was back in the UK working at Leicester City, and I got asked one season to take on the women's team. And we had an amazing squad of players, but this is over 10 years ago. And what blew me away was when we had COVID and we were stuck here in Australia and we couldn't get back to the UK or to Europe. But to then go back in 2021 and to see the level of females football and the level it's gone to is like chalk and cheese. It's like it's gone another level. It's scary how good. And we've got some amazing female players in our programme who we've unearthed in Australia who are now going to the UK this year on contracts, and we've managed to sign an amazing a girl who's only 12 years of age. She's going across to play for Liverpool this year, and there's just talent everywhere. But the big thing is it's having the finances to get out there and help them. And our biggest thing that we've spoken about is about having programs that are sustainable, but that actually run for longer than a day or a week. They actually run for years and years and years. And our program that we run, the Professional Player Pathway, it gets athletes on the program for 4 years, because we love to educate the families that things don't happen overnight. It takes a long time. But also, I think if we want women and girls to stay in sport as well, we've got to offer them something more than just a one-day workshop. And and that's one of the big pushes that we've had on. And we're getting a huge increase in females coming through our program now. Still not where we want it to be. We still want more numbers. So maybe, you can help us with that as we go along. I'd love to connect in with Carol. So the next question I want to ask you is about your role with the Surf Life Saving Queensland, what your job title is, what are some of the KPIs that you do, and like what your day-to-day job looks like, and how you're trying to help females and women in that area.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I joined Surf Life Saving Queensland end of last year, and it's been amazing so far. I think the opportunity is amazing. Surf Life Saving Queensland is an organisation that's really rooted in tradition, but the board and the leadership is now looking at the future as well simultaneously. And my role is pretty much, it's a little bit more than just women and girls, and looking at diversity, equity and inclusion as a whole, which is something I think I've made a very conscious decision with, just I guess looking at underrepresented groups beyond women and girls. And also when I was working with, in my previous role, there's so many intersections with, you could be a woman, but you could have a disability. Like myself, I'm a woman who's also from a multicultural background. So it just allows you to have a lot more, I guess, a personable approach to what you're doing. So my role is primarily, along with our leadership, starting off, starting a new department, which is really exciting. This is the first time ever that we've had a DEI manager, dedicated person in this role, and now working towards the priorities of what's going to be, what Surf Life Saving Queensland is looking to do next. Part of my role is, looking at, obviously, first things first, strategy. As I said, we're talking about sustainability. How are we going to approach that for the next 3 years? And at Queensland Women's Week this year in March, we actually launched our first ever DEI strategy, which was an amazing milestone for us, and the team is really proud. And now we want to work with the community and our members to actually bring this to life. So that would mean focusing on women and girls, various programs and initiatives. How do we develop these programs? A lot of surveys, because as you can imagine, we're also trying to get as much data as we can from our members to make an informed decision. So really everything from a review of where we're at as an organization, what are our opportunities, where we need to work towards, whether that's in the form of programs or various opportunities that we can give to. And the one of the big things in Surf Life Saving specific to women is that we're looking at our membership that's nearly 50%. That's women and girls, which is, I think, an amazing
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, 46% at the moment, which is, when I look at it, that's, for me, working in DI, an amazing opportunity. We already have women involved in the movement. And now let me just review the other information that I have with, how can we get the less than 33% of women in club leadership roles? So how do we potentially look at leadership, governance, and that aspect and area as a focus for us as an organization? So, I think data just has a story that it tells, a lot more people kind of need to work with that and so that we're making informed decisions. So, it's really exciting. The next couple of months is about finding the right partnerships for the organization. Where can we, what do our members want? What events can we have? And also looking at systemic change within policies and procedures. So I'm pretty much managing all of that, and hopefully looking to expand this further for the organization.
So it sounds like you've got a very busy role for the next 12 months.
I do. But the big thing about DEI is you cannot do it as a standalone,
Yeah.
and we have an amazing team where my role is to work with everyone from, obviously our executives and the board, but also our HR. So we're ensuring, DEI in that space, or working with sport, what opportunities. I think you want to do it in such a way where, I always say that the future of DEI is you actually don't really need it. You shouldn't want to have someone in that role because it should just become day to day. So in order for that to happen, collaboration is so important with different departments and things like that. And I think I'm really lucky that all of our senior leadership team that I work with, or all our managers, are really focused, and they know it's a priority, and they're all working towards it, both men and women. So we have a lot of allies as well. It
was funny when we were talking off camera before, and you take it for granted, you think about Surf Life Saving Queensland, but you were talking about the drones, the helicopters, the different, you realise how big it is as an organisation. So it must be hard to really pinpoint in one area and to focus on one area, because there's probably so many moving parts to the group as a whole. So that must be tricky for you to navigate through sometimes.
Yeah, I think, it's a big organisation, but it also kind of presents you with so many more opportunities. Yeah. And, by the end of it, it's like we're working towards our members. We're also working towards getting people from diverse communities involved in our group. So I think we're going to focus on one step at a time, with really what is our next for next 3 years, what is our priority, and kind of go with that. Otherwise, there's really, you'd be being pulled and pushed into all sorts of spaces. But now I think we've established that we're going to have a strategic approach to what we do. We want to make sure we do it well when we do it, and that we're speaking to the needs of the members to start off with. What do they want? So as I said, that's going to require a lot of consulting and collaboration, working together, which we've already started doing. So that's been great.
I think bringing up two daughters, and my first experience being English and getting involved with Surf Life Saving Queensland was Little Nippers, and taking my girls along to that. And we done it over at South Bank, and I think my eldest was 9 at the time, and my youngest was 3 or 4, and they loved it. And watching the coaches with them and teaching them stuff. In regards to what's your big push? What's the one big area that you're working on? Is it something like Little Nippers programs? Is it? What is it you really focused on at the minute?
That's a really good question. I think we've got, for different focus areas, we'd have different priorities. So if I look at, let's say, as I spoke to you about, women, and we said the focus would be more women in leadership roles. Now, when I look at people with disability, I think there are so many opportunity, and so many clubs are already doing it. And this is the amazing thing about I guess our members and our clubs is with the limited resources, or the support that they've had, they've still got such amazing programs running for neurodivergent kids within Nippers. And I guess as the state organization, now we're trying to work with them to understand what do our clubs offer. So where do they need support? Can we have a more structured approach to an inclusive Nippers program? So obviously, Nippers is massive, and everyone knows it's amazing because our junior membership is so vast. But where can DEI come in and support? And I think over the past 8 months, what I've seen is, okay, let's really support the community with our clubs with running inclusive Nippers programs, or if they're running that, how could they, what more can we do to provide them with training or education and awareness with the how-tos around it?
So it's just that big support, I suppose, isn't it? Just feel like they're supported in there, and you can help them as you go along.
I think it's really important, in diversity, inclusion initiatives, I think there's a lot more. I think the support is something that it encourages people to take it on or do more of, because then they know that they're doing the right thing because of the guidance that's provided. So, as an organization, if we can provide resources or structure or guidelines, whatever is needed by the community, I think that's going to make it a lot easier for people to pick up and roll with it, rather than, individually go out and try to look for someone who's specialized working with kids even though you have to do that, get in an external or someone from your club. just having that guidance would really support and put everyone in the right direction and allow us to be on the right direction as well.
I was very fortunate when I worked in the Premier League. I worked at a team called Leicester City, and I was asked to work a couple of days a week in the community department. And I'll be honest, when I was younger, I had a very elite mindset, and I was like, I want to coach the top team and I don't want to do anything else. And this is where I'm focused. And I actually spent probably 2 and a bit years working in the community department of a daytime, side by side working in the academy. And we supported blind football. We were the first football club probably in the planet, this has gone back 15 years ago, to set up a program called Walking Football. And it was for anyone with any disabilities, also for anyone who was over the age of 65 who couldn't run anymore, but just that wants to be involved in football. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I look back now and I think it was the most rewarding job ever. And I was so lucky to work in that community department because Leicester City were at the forefront of leading with that. What was a shame at the time, 15 years ago, was that a lot of people used to put it in the hard basket. They would be really blunt and honest, and it used to shock me that, like, blind football's just too hard to do, walking football's too hard to do. But I think it's changed now, and I think to see people being included and to be involved, it's so important. Because I remember just like seeing the faces on some of these players when they'd see the coaches from Leicester City to come out and do football with them for 2 hours. And even like the older generations, like you realise that we'd done a couple of interviews and it was really, really sad. We interviewed a guy and he was 71 and he said that 1 hour a week was all he was living for because he'd lost his wife about 6 years previous. He had no children. He was living on his own. And that really hit a string with me that 1 hour a week was his out in life. And that was the one thing he looked forward to every week. And that was like, to talk about an inclusion program being successful, and that program's kicking goals still as we speak in the UK at the moment. And you must see similar things yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's the power of, like, I guess the community and the sport, and we've got so many stories where just bringing out like people, just more about, because sport has always been seen as very competitive and we've played it and we know it. And I think nowadays it's changing and there's this awareness where, it's also about the camaraderie and bringing people together. And I think I'd say that even for music and sport both have a universal language no matter where you're from. Yeah. Like, we're talking football and because I just love the sport and it's amazing for me to just sit here and hear about I guess your experience in football as well. So I think we need to just remember that somewhere. And I guess for us as well, like as life saving, of course, like the priority is saving lives as people who are patrolling. So that's also, it's not just like rugby or another sport that you can just pick up and play. So we've got certain considerations that you've got with ensuring that it's safe for even people who are saving lives and how much people are getting involved. But at the same time, like wherever there are opportunities, there's so many other ways in which whether people with disability or multicultural people can get involved and be a part of it. So
that's phenomenal.
I think that's
Well, we're just going to go to our last break and then we're going to be back in a couple of minutes, guys, and we're just going to finish off with a few more minutes. So big thank you, hang around and enjoy our next advertisement.
Hey everyone, we are coming around every major city in Australia over the next 12 months. We have got free objective football testing going on, guys. It's for boys and girls aged 10 all the way through to 18 years of age. The objective testing is quite simple. We'll put you through our 6 tests and it'll give you your results, physical, technical and tactical. And also, we're going to choose 16 winners to join us on an all expenses paid trip to Europe in 2024 and also 2025. Guys, what have you got to lose? Nothing. It's free to sign up. You get free objective testing and you'll get a free feedback, and maybe you'll be joining me at the Santiago Bernabeu in 2024 or 25.
Everyone, it's Raymond Wood. We're back here with Sunaina. A big thank you for joining us, to our listeners. Just remember, guys, we only can make this podcast possible if you subscribe. So please, if you are watching this, please subscribe and follow us. Now, we were just talking a little bit about Surf Life Queensland and your new role. What is your sort of future looking like? Are you plan to be with them for 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, without giving away too much?
I'm here. I think this is, for me personally, a great opportunity in my career, like just starting out a department from scratch, identifying opportunities. We have a very committed team. I've just started getting to know everyone really well. So yes, I'm here. I'd like to expand this a lot more, work a lot more with the community and the members, because I haven't had that opportunity yet. And I guess for me, I'm constantly trying to upskill myself in knowledge. Like there's really, even though I work in gender equity and DEI, it's forever changing because there's so much happening and it's always evolving. So I try my best to stay up with all of it and get better at, policies and upskilling myself. I've started blogging as well because I really believe in what I do. I think I write a lot around, I started with writing more on gender and, women and girls in sport as a whole, and articles around, even media representation with, comparing a footballer who's white to an article written by the media, same story, to a footballer who's white and black, and how those stories are portrayed, just to share with people, with just educate them, or more so make them aware, and really engage everyone in the discussion, because I feel like inclusion is everyone's responsibility. It can't happen with one person advocating for it. You yourself said, you've got 2 daughters, and I think even for men, just, you're already, so many of you are already in your own roles advocating as fathers or, managers and bosses, and encouraging women and encouraging girls. And I think we need a lot more of that, within what we do. So, hopefully really support people, and hopefully they can read some of our work or listen to this podcast and take away something that would make them think with how everyone can make a difference and be a part of this journey.
Yeah, I think awareness is a big thing, I think, in anything we do in life. And it's quite funny, we get quite a few people say to me, like, Ray, you had this person on your podcast, but it doesn't really have anything to do with football. But then I watched it and I think I'm seeing the links, and this is what I'm saying to people: awareness and connections is the way we need to move. And I said we need to operate as one big community. It doesn't matter what sport or what you have. One of the questions I want to ask, which is interesting, in regards to Surf Life Saving Queensland, do you guys have much to do with the other federations, so New South Wales, South Australia? Do you guys collaborate and talk and speak, or what's it like in regards to the different states?
Yeah, we've got, with Surf Life Saving Australia at the moment, in my role, there's a lot of work happening with diversity, equity and inclusion. So definitely collaborating with them quite a bit. At the moment, as we speak, we've got the Aussies, which is the Nationals on championship in Sunshine Coast in Mooloolaba. So I'm heading there on Saturday to actually meet the team who are coming down from SLSA. This is the first time we have adaptive events, so for people with disability, and we hope to kind of, follow those footsteps and have something statewide. So, I think there's definitely collaboration. As I said, there's always room for more collaboration. Yeah. I'm very big on that. I read somewhere there's this evidence on global benchmarking that was done with UK, France, and Norway, where they spoke about the 3 countries have a coordinated approach to gender and sport, which is why the outcomes of it is so strong. Yeah. And if I look at Australia at the moment and look at, what's happening in Victoria, obviously there's a national focus on, gender, not just gender, but just sporting strategies and things like that. But when you look at gender, Victoria is the first state that has a dedicated office for women and sport. So I think that in itself, the more we can collaborate, the better.
Yeah.
And we're definitely trying to do that. Like nationally, Life Saving Victoria has done a lot of work with women in sports. So I've met with, I was lucky when I went off to Melbourne when I started my role to meet with one of our colleagues there. We're sharing best practices with what they're doing. I think we're one community, and as you said, not just in life saving but in sport as well. And
in general.
Yeah, and we continue to do that even with other sports and sharing that, and speaking to I guess people in my role in different organizations. So we can continue to grow.
We're going to finish off, and it's always a tricky one, and we have it in all the sports, and it's financials and support financially. Now, you can never have enough money as an organisation, but how do you guys achieve that? And are you pretty much driven by donations, and how does it work for you guys? And also, if you want to give you guys a big push, and if there's a place where people can donate and things like that, is that something that you do?
Yeah, I think what I'm across is the organizational, budgets and how we can work towards investing more in DEI. So that's definitely a commitment that we're working towards. There's obviously a lot around funding that we get from, we've got either partnerships or national or state fundings that come through that we can apply for. So drive our initiatives through that. But yeah.
That's amazing. So we'll just finish off on the Surf Life Saving Queensland. So you said obviously it's a new role. You foresee yourself being there for the next couple of years. What's probably, if maybe you look back in 5 years' time, once you've been in the role, hopefully for 4 to 5 years, what's maybe one thing that you want to look back on and go, I achieved this? What's the benchmark that you want to set yourself?
I think in 5 years, it would be just great to be having more conversations, obviously seeing growth in our KPIs of, what we want to achieve and what our targets are. But I think beyond that, it's just creating a community where we actually reflect the communities that we serve, and that is, at the moment, they're projecting about 56% of Queensland's net population growth being multicultural. So it would be good to have just reflect that, more visibility in people who, with disability, or more First Nations people involved in life saving. And honestly, if I do look back and even see that representation across, our annual report, or, in the community when you walk into a club, I think that would be success for us, is actually including everyone and staying including and being included. Yeah,
that's amazing, and that's a really, really good one to finish on. So a big thank you for joining me and giving us your time. I know you're a very busy lady at the moment with your job and the new role, but a big thank you from me and everyone at Euro Football Star. And hopefully, maybe in the next 50 or 60 episodes, we'll get you back on again and see where you're at and how everything's travelling.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much for having me and for taking the time out. And I hope all the listeners have enjoyed this.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I mean, we've got a lot of avid followers who are following us, and they're going to love it. So a big thank you from me and everyone at the Raymond Wood podcast. And we will be back in the next couple of days with our next episode. Thank you.